One.
Hello, friends of the Gathering of the Miami Valley. Great to be with you this Wednesday. It's another podcast time, and I'm super excited to have a couple friends, couple Gathering champions, some guys I've had the pleasure of doing life with for a long time. One, a little bit longer than the other.
Which one?
Not to age people here,
Which one?
Eli. But Eli, I've done it with for, have we ever figured out how long have we known each other? I feel like it's
Too long.
It's at least.
I'm kidding.
I met you in 1997, if I remember correctly, right before Springfield City Youth Mission started. So that would, I think, early in that year. So I bet it's going on 25 years. Rob, I don't know if we should get a cake or something, but it feels like that is worth something. And then you and I have known each other probably
4 years, 5,
3 or
4
4
or 5.
years. That seems, it's like dog years for you, people years for him.
You just call me a dog.
I think I'm the dog, maybe.
This is going downhill.
It is. Well, anyway, we are here today to talk retreats, and I'm excited. Again, back to the history with us. I mean, we've been talking about this kind of stuff for a long time. Rob and I more recently, but why don't you both tell folks who may not know, Eli's been on this before, so this is your second stop with us. The last one was a great conversation with Malcolm Davis and Darren Blakely talking about race, as that was really ramped up and still is, but ramped up back post George Floyd. And Rob, you do a lot of this. And yet we've never been together doing this, so it's fun to have you on. So Rob, tell, just so people know who you are, a little bit about yourself and your story, and we'll try to keep that to a couple minutes.
Yeah, I'm Rob Alexander. I think in Springfield, most people know me as the director of the Small Business Development Center here in town. Obviously, that's my day job. I'm also a father of 4 kids who are between the ages of 11 and 20. Involved on a couple of nonprofits, Encompass Connection Center. You and I serve together there. Really involved at Medway Church. That's where I met my wife in small group 17 years ago. So if you don't know much about Medway, it went from a church that was like a 175-year-old church with about 70 people where the average age was 70 to it's probably, if not the biggest, one of the biggest churches in Clark County and growing super fast. So to be on that journey has been a very special part of our lives for the past 17 years. But man, really busy. Recently started a business with 4 kids and serving in the community and doing what I do at SBDC. Life seems like it's in fast forward and going by fast. And I'm just trying to figure things out. I just turned 40. I feel like I want to have a midlife crisis. Sounds fun to me.
Have you ever heard anybody say that, Eli? I want to have a midlife crisis.
I'm ready for it.
We can give you one.
Trust me, you don't.
40 seems like the perfect age to have one.
Wow.
So trying to figure out how to slow down, be intentional, which is a great thing. I'm glad we're talking about what we're talking about today because I needed it. I definitely needed it.
Yeah. So Eli, I mean, everybody knows you, but I guess every time we say something like that, that's not true. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Real fast. I'm in my 4th quarter at 70 years of age, just turned last month.
Is it like high school in minutes, 4th quarter, like NFL 4th quarter?
NFL 4th quarter. Yeah.
You lived a while.
But feeling great. Cancer survivor. I got both my COVID shots. I got a wife of 37 years. And
St. Judy?
Did you call her Saint?
I did call her St. Judy. I'm always trying to score points because last time I saw her, I was doing anything but scoring points. I tried to take a picture.
He called
which
you
Rob,
a dog and her saying.
I got that.
well, just know this, Rob. If Judy's around,
not right, though.
I've known her for a long time. Don't try to get anything that looks like a camera close to her and shoot it in her direction. It's not going to go well, as I've found out again.
It's probably tough for you. Like you like to take pictures
like
while
to
we're
take pictures,
eating
yeah.
or looking horrible.
Yeah, marketing.
Yeah. So grandfather, still doing fatherhood work, working with dads that want to be the best they can be, working with kids through the Sunshine Clubs, making that transition from live in person to more and more virtual work with dads and kids. So that's a challenge. Other than that, trying to go at a slow but steady pace at this point in my career.
Great
and
for where
life.
we're going.
Yeah.
So I know we try to be careful about time-sensitive stuff on here and not make things sound dated, but I'm going to cancel that for the moment, and we're going to talk time-sensitive. May 4th, give us 30 seconds. You got something going on May 4th.
May 4th, we're doing our first ever and I hope last virtual fundraising event in which we have a Star Wars theme. Basically what it is, it's an opportunity for anyone that wants to join in a community family meal. we're going to be focused in on as our meal hosts, Scott and Joy Green and their
He knows how to
family.
promote a little bit. Scott Green.
I like that guy.
Yeah. So they're going to kind of be the hosts of this. They're going to be preparing a meal, and everyone that registered will also prepare the same meal, donated by Kroger, and we're going to have some entertainment so that while the meal cooks, there's something to do. And Jeff Walker will be playing a guitar solo medley, and we're turning that into a Name That Tune. So folks who name all the tunes will get a chance to win a gift certificate. And at the end, we're going to have some testimonial videos of dads and kids who've been impacted by our ministry, and then an opportunity for people to support the ministry.
I'm a little offended, Rob, when Eli said it's hopefully a first and last virtual event. I don't think he believed that until he heard me talking about, and you talking about, when I got to freestyle on a retreat recently, because I could come back year 2 if you want to do some freestyle rap and hip hop to help out the entertainment. I'm just throwing it out there.
It's entertaining.
Okay, we'll give that some thought.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought about it.
Pray
Probably
about
not.
Well, let's talk about why we're here. We are here because it's definitely one of my biggest passions in life. I think, you guys are at varying degrees talking about retreats. And there's a lot of different ways we can go about that. Rob, I know you got a big scouting background. Eli, I know this is something we've talked about over the last 20 or so years. But when you think about retreats, give us a little experience, maybe what you've done in the past, and what gets you jazzed in general thinking about retreats. What gets you like, ooh, I can't wait to do it? Eli, we'll start with you, and then we'll get Rob second. History of retreats.
Well, I don't have a long history with retreats. Vacations, yes. I'm old enough to remember the Promise Keeper days where guys would pile into a car and drive for hours and hours to get to this
DC.
mega event with men only. Those were tremendous. But the ride there and the ride back with the conversation was a big part of what was great about it.
Amen.
A lot of bonding took place in those cases. I've got friends today that
We're built
their
through that.
friendship was started as a result of engagement in the Promise Keepers movement. It has actually only been recently that I've been attending any men's retreats, and you are responsible for sufficiently twisting my arm to be involved in one just a few weeks ago, and it was amazing, just absolutely amazing. I, in hindsight, wish that I have done more of that in my life to kind of slow my pace, because you've known me for a long time, and it's been go, 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 do all the time, and it's only within the last few years that I'm learning how to slow my pace and spend more quality time building relationships, getting closer to God, and bonding with other men in the community without neglecting my primary responsibility of doing that with my wife.
Yeah, and work, obviously. We'll stay with you for a minute, because I know Rob and I just were in the locker room and we talked about that, where Rob really hit on, and he'll probably talk more about that, where it's about the relational side with people, and it's also about the relational side with God. And I commented with you, we just went to Pigeon Forge with 5 other men, so there's 7 of us total, and I commented to you that one of the things I noticed on that retreat more than I do either here, or maybe I just took the time to notice it, that you definitely had a great rhythm about you. You were very present. You had a pretty slow pace in a good way. And is there something that's triggered for you to kind of be more intentional even about that? I like the phrase I heard recently, the pace of grace. But there was just something really right in your rhythm there for those few days in Pigeon Forge. Where did that kind of turn a corner for you or something?
Well, that has been a slow process getting there. I've really had to be intentional about that. But I keep using the term age, as I have matured.
Yes, that's a good word. Eli is mature.
Yeah, as I have matured, I have learned to value more and more the time spent building relationships. It's precious to me now.
It's precious to watch. I mean, our friend Jamie Hensley, who hopefully will watch this, just seeing you two, who maybe would have never crossed paths had we not made the time to go to Pigeon Forge, and you guys really clicked. I mean, we've talked about, I know you guys have followed up with each other, and I mean, it's scary to think sometimes how we take for granted Springfield, Clark County, the Miami Valley, and we just think people naturally know each other. That's not true.
Yeah.
And I mean, Jamie and I got together recently, and I talked about, I continually get excited thinking about where you and he go relationally.
Yeah, but also Brent Park.
Who's been on the podcast before.
Yeah, I mean, we've connected now much better, much more solidly than I think we would have had it not been for that retreat. Meeting up with Jason Messer today, I think.
Wow.
That never would have happened had we not spent that time
Sure.
in the car and then at the actual, destination, talking and getting to know one another. So if that's the only thing that happened as a result of that retreat, it was a blessing for me.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. So Rob, talk about that for you. Think about history retreats. You've probably done a number of things, particularly as a leader with scouts, because you get a long history with scouts. And then just when you think about it, what gets you jazzed? Like why, especially maybe you're thinking about it real recently, because that was just last weekend that we did that retreat. So maybe speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, for me, last weekend was the first time where I felt like I've been a consumer of a retreat as opposed to a producer of a retreat. I'm the son of a workaholic. My dad was a firefighter who always had 2 or 3 jobs, and he would bank all of his time off for the summer just to watch us play baseball. It was never about rest. I guess I just grew up valuing hard work. And so I don't even know how many weeks of vacation I get in my job. It doesn't really matter because I just know I'm not going to probably use it. So retreats, I used to run the National Hemophilia Foundation. In here, I know retreats are important. I know it's good to get away, get under a roof with other people who you can relate to. I would put them on. I've probably put on 24 retreats in my life, but never been on one. I know I need it, but I feel guilty when I take time for myself. A retreat for me as an adult has been, hey, hon, I need to go golf 18 holes. I need 4 hours to myself, or maybe I go hike. The problem is that's not enough time. I mean, it's just not enough time to recharge and be the leader that I know God's calling me to be a leader, but it's just all depleting. My life is just about depleting and depleting. And so to be able to go on this retreat has opened my eyes that it is okay as a leader to have to soak things in sometimes. It actually might make me a better leader.
So you just shared at our locker room, and you talked a good bit about the retreat we just went on to the Springs, Indiana. You might want to check it out. It's the springsindiana.org. And the first time you've been a consumer, not a producer. So do you feel differently about feeling like it's selfish or greedy to go on a retreat after you got back last week from Indiana? Or do you have a different perspective on that?
I guess it's selfish in that I know I need it, but I don't feel bad about it. It was cool to call home to my wife and feel like, oh, she probably wishes she was here and not me, and I feel guilty, but she really blessed me and felt like, no, stay there. Everything's fine back home. I have a real tendency to think like everything revolves around me, and the truth is it doesn't. SBDC was just fine with me being gone. My wife and kids were just fine with me being gone, and I came back a better man. So I don't feel guilty over it. Is it selfish? Only in the way that I know I need it, so I'm going to go get it, and I'm not going to feel bad about it.
Well, and Jennifer, it seemed like, not to put words in her mouth, but seems like she really felt good about the retreat for you. She sensed God really working, moving through some prayers, for your family, for kids, for her. People probably know her name now, or maybe they didn't before, whether they've met or not. So I'm sure, 19 other guys there, they meet Jennifer. It's like, oh, you're Jennifer. Yeah. So, any more on that as far as how she maybe would respond? Or do you think it's easier to get her to say yes next time? And same with you, Eli, with Judy. Is it easier for a yes coming from her say, oh, yeah, please do that?
I think so. And this is still very fresh with me. I think I'm still processing. I mean, that was just 2 weeks ago, maybe.
Week and a half ago, yeah.
But I think she's real happy that I got help from that. I think it also helped her realize I need that. I need respite. I need friends who I can pour my heart out to and be vulnerable with. I think this is going to go very interesting places for her. And even though she wasn't there and one of my kids in particular wasn't there, just from prayers and names being spoken out loud, something happened. Something you can only really ascribe to God being there and the Holy Spirit working through people who weren't even there. Man, it was powerful.
Eli, would Judy agree with something like that? I mean, obviously, this had a little bit more of a spiritual emphasis than ours did at Pigeon Forge, but do you think Judy becomes, through that process, a bigger fan of you getting away and understanding that is a selfless thing for a wife to her husband to let you get away?
No, she doesn't want me to get away. I'm just kidding. She's not a big fan of me being away by myself without her. She is tolerant. She's accepting. I think she understands the need.
Mm-hmm.
But I need to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to make sure she gets the same kind of break from her routines, from her responsibilities and all that. That's a bit of a stronger push needed because she is such a private homebody type, homemaker, and it's more difficult for her to identify groups with which, she feels like she fits and would enjoy together the same kind of thing.
Sure.
But that's on me as her husband to try to help her, to gently push her in that direction. If she doesn't want to go there, that's great too. But I know her, and I know some of her needs, after 37 years. So I have to make sure that I am including her as much as possible with our own family retreats, the two of us. And we've got one planned, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
So I guess the wisdom, the better part of wisdom is to make sure that you know your spouse, you know your mate, and deal with her accordingly.
Yeah. I can't think of a retreat I've been on since I've been married, since I've had kids, where I didn't come back more in love with my wife, whether that was an intentional thing or not. I mean, I don't think I've gone and said, oh, I'm going to make sure I come back more in love with my wife or more in love with my kids, but that's just kind of how the Holy Spirit works. And then as a dad, feeling even greater about my kids. And I just think that's, God meets us there. I'm quick when I get back, depending on what's going on in life, to either take care of our favorite restaurants, Coldwater Cafe. I don't know if I should give a shout out and give a little love to them at the expense of anybody else, but we went to Coldwater Cafe for lunch Saturday. I tell husbands all the time, one of the best things you can do for your wife, whether you plan it, she plans it, she comes to you and asks, especially with kids at home, to let her get away. That could be an overnight thing. That could be in a cabin. Kara, a couple years ago, I think she went out of the country with with one of her sisters, maybe both, and her mom. And I'm like, I got to make that happen. Like, she's been gracious over these years. You could argue it's my job, but even still, she doesn't have to be supportive of that. And I think where we come back better, wanting to serve, wanting to step in. I had a friend years ago. Fortunately, he moved out of state. Nobody's going to know who I'm talking about. But he told me one time, we were talking about this topic and about allowing your wife to get away. And he said, I've always told my wife, they had 3 kids at the time, and said, you can get away, but you got to take at least one kid with you. And I was thinking, what? Like, how are you helping her out at all there? Like, she needs to be totally free and just not be a mom and just, get to be. So, talk more about in the context. So we have Montana, which we do. We're hoping starting next year, we might even do it this year, that we take at least one group of men on a men's trip out to Montana, father-son as well. So I've done 2 father-son trips out there with our friend Chris Hartenstein, who was here 2 weeks ago and had a big impact on you, Rob, with our time in our locker room. And then father-son trips. Some years, and this is a smaller one, we go to the Cove, the Billy Graham Training Center, which we've talked about, Nashville, North Carolina. Pre-COVID, we were going regularly twice a year to the Abbey of Gethsemane, which is a monastery down in Kentucky. And unfortunately, we just can't do that now. It's still shut down. A lot of older monks there. They're just, I don't know when they're going to open back up. The Springs, which we just did. We've got this Pigeon Forge thing now. Jamie Hensley, who we mentioned, he's got another opportunity for us. And there's more things kind of coming. What type appealed to you? I know, like, again, ours was more, you said it was a good mix of structured, unstructured. Ours was very unstructured. I think Brent and I both did a devotional one morning, but that was it. So speak to where you see real value in that. And you've already hit on some things between time with the Lord and time with other guys, but what are other things? Maybe, Rob, you go first, that you just grab from something like that are valuable things to follow away.
Yeah. People are surprised when they find out I'm very introverted. So the thought of a retreat that is completely unstructured is actually like a little nerve-wracking for me to think about. I like having some structure. It makes me feel comfortable as an introvert, and there's plenty of introverts out there. We're like half the population. So I like having some structure, but man, do you ever need that unstructured time to have those hallway conversations, but also just to be able to get away from people in life and sounds and cars and just go talk to God. At the Springs, I had a chance just to go take a hike, and I was in tears because God was just flooding my mind with all these beautiful memories where it had been filled with a lot of negative junk for quite a while. And man, that was powerful, but that wasn't the only thing. Like, I got a lot of stuff out of the structured moments. I got a lot of stuff out of the impromptu one-on-one things and you rapping by the fire. Like,
You mean do it? Do we need to do that now? Do we have some music over there, Seth? I'm ready to go if we need it.
probably not.
That was a highlight for Eli that I didn't do it on his retreat.
Yeah, I personally liked the mix. The silent retreat sounds interesting to me, where you're quiet a lot of the time. I think I could handle that as an introvert, but who knows where my mind would wander.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. So on our Springs retreat, I hadn't even thought about this till you just said what you said, but I laughed a lot, and I need that in every retreat, and I cried.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, what is the Jim Valvano had that famous quote at the ESPYs about, you know, a day, if you cry every day, that's a good day, like how much we need that. And I just find for me, I release a lot on retreats. Mm-hmm. Tears. Obviously, I like the solitary part. I mean, I always tell people, like at the Springs, I'm going to go lock myself in my room for a while at some point, multiple times over. The Abbey, it's what the Abbey's about, so you get to do it there. But the emotional part of it is just so healthy for me. Eli, what's something, maybe was there a special point for you, maybe out of the box that was a powerful thing for you in Tennessee when we were down there? Anything significant?
Well, I enjoyed the unstructured nature of it. I think a mix of, you know, having lots of unstructured time as well as some mapped out, planned, you know, itinerary sort of items, devotionals, you know, that's good. But the unstructured time allowed space for guys to sit around and talk. I mean, what men get to do that much? You know, it was powerful. And I think what made it so rich was the fact that you had men there who didn't know each other, who were just getting to know each other. I mean, the trip down, you know, gave an opportunity for that, but then all of us together, you know, in the same space, I shouldn't say all of us, clusters of us in the same space, having an opportunity to really talk and to get to know each other was powerful for me. I mean, we got into, you know, we're not going to turn this into a race conversation, but we got into a conversation about that, and it was organic. I mean, the way it began and proceeded and ended was just, it was amazing.
Let's stay here for a minute.
It was amazing.
Let's stay here for a minute. Let's unpack that a little bit. I mean, that conversation. It was the last morning. We're kind of in the mode of getting ready to head back to Springfield or Dayton. And then our friend Jamie walked up to you and kind of replayed that a little bit. We're not going to focus on it the rest of the time or whatever, but that was a powerful, I said that was the highlight of the trip for me. So replay.
I was actually thinking about another time.
Oh, I was thinking about.
So yeah, you can bring that to the table.
Okay, well, Rob, this is a neat story. So the last morning we're sitting around. I think there was about 5 of us. Again, like you said, except at lunch or when we went to the one show the one night, there was really not a point when all of us were together. Like Eli and I went outlet mall shopping the one time, and you guys, a group of them went to Gatlinburg to go to the park, and a couple of us stayed back. And so the last morning, I think we were maybe eating breakfast or had just finished or whatever, and there were about 4 or 5 of us in there sitting, and our friend Jamie walks in, looks at Eli, and he had just been like actively quiet in the conversation. He looks at Eli and he said, "So I'm 53 years old. I grew up in Fairborn, Xenia, you know, Beaver Creek somewhat. That's kind of in my life. I'm a white guy. I'm primarily around white. I just don't have experience. I haven't known many black people." He goes, "What would you tell me?" He goes, "I've got this new store." And he just starts kind of going through the dynamics of his culture and where the black and white thing is now mixing based on the new store he owns. And it was just so honest. It was so real. It was so like, I'm not afraid to step into this, but he was very childlike in how he said it. And I about 10 minutes later, because we've had plenty of conversations, I just got up and walked away. I said, the only thing I feel like I'll do right now is take away from this conversation, because it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. And then Jamie and Eli unpacked for a while, and I guess the other guys stayed. But Wasn't there something beautiful about that conversation?
Yeah, it was. I was honored that he felt comfortable with me to ask questions, about how he should handle it. He opened a store in a black community in Dayton. All the customers are African Americans, and he has no African Americans on his team. So he's got this white store with white people and all these black customers, and just had questions about about that and how to handle that, because it's still new, still fresh with him. That was an honor, really, to
It was an honor
have
to
that
watch it.
conversation. I didn't have any answers for him.
Yeah.
Because I've never been in that situation before. Just the opposite for me. I'm usually the only black person in the room. So, but it was a really good conversation, and I'm glad he felt comfortable enough to talk to me about it. I was thinking about, I think it was the day before, the evening before, or 2 evenings before, when we're sitting around the dining room table, just 3 or 4 of us, and I guess the subject of politics came up, and one of the white guys on the group made some comments about how great America is, and all this, and you got a couple of black guys there, and we're going, are you paying attention to what's going on in our world today? And we got into a conversation, and the best thing that I've experienced in a long time was another white guy, Christian, evangelical, he spoke up, and he talked about the fact that he had the book Before the Mayflower recommended to him, and he read it, right? I mean, it's a big, thick book that goes into the history of blacks in America before the Mayflower, and brings it up to, I think the book is from the 60s, from the 1600s up to the 1960s. And he schooled us. I mean, not just the white guy who brought up the subject, but, he just, he had understood better the history, which leads to where we are now in our country, in race relations, and race relations within the church. And that was the most powerful thing, because it was a white guy. It was a Christian, white, evangelical guy who brought all this knowledge, and we were in awe. My heart was full, because it meant so much coming from him than had it been coming from me. So, I mean, that was worth the effort of being a part of that group.
See, I think I love what you said about you were full right there, because I think that, to me, I don't use the word satisfy a lot, but I think there's a lot of satisfying moments on these. We had a moment, Rob would probably remember, where one of the guys had just got done sharing and really spilled his guts about some very difficult stuff in our retreat, and another guy just said, hey, I want to speak to what you just said. And he said 3 things, and I always forget the 3 things. 2 of them I got down. He said, I just want to say you're loved, you're forgiven, and I forgot the 3rd one, and there was just this holy moment from him sharing something really difficult. And one of the guys that people would look at in that room as a little bit more solid, spiritual leader type, and they hugged, and it was just like, wow, that was worth coming. And that's the beauty of retreats to me. It's hard to do that in a lunch. Yeah. It's hard to do that at breakfast. Right. It's hard to do that over a cup of coffee. I mean, I've had meetings, we all have probably, with a guy for 2-3 hours or whatever. But even in that, there's a get to know you, there's a catch up, there's, hey, did you see what happened to Tom Brady? Whatever it may be. And you just can't you used the word earlier, richness. You just can't get that kind of richness here like you can there. So I want to go to my quote I love, and I'm just going to throw it out, and you guys comment. Rob, you go first. Mark Batterson's change of pace plus change of place equals change of perspective. I could land the rest of the time here. Speak to that quote. Do you agree with that? Disagree? Why?
I agree. I experienced it. The change of pace was very difficult for me. It felt like time was crawling for those first few days. And you talked about whatever happened on the last day. I think you talked about something that was the day before last. I know for me, that last day is when all of a sudden everybody's going more than just surface deep. There was value in shaking off the world we left behind a little bit, and that takes time.
Shaking off the world, that's a great phrase.
Yeah, and like, you're just used to going at such a fast pace that you can't just stop and immediately start going at a slow pace. Your mind's still racing. You're still kind of putting on fronts and airs, not letting people really see what's really going on in your heart. And so if that had been a 2-day retreat, just like a weekend, I don't know that I would have gotten nearly as much out of it. You need to give yourself enough time to truly retreat and hear from God and listen to yourself.
Eli is resonating with what you're saying big time.
Oh, yeah.
Look at your faces.
I mean, you're nailing it. I mean, that's exactly right. I think it takes 3 days.
It takes you time to get comfortable with them too. Like, so if I recall right, the third thing that he said is that, and you need to forgive yourself. And as soon as he said that, the tears, you could see them coming. But you can't say that to someone when you just first meet them.
Sure.
Like that happened on the third day when we felt comfortable challenging each other. We'd been around each other long enough that we felt comfortable saying the difficult thing that needed to be said. So there's magic that happens, but you got to let it happen. And the pace dictates that.
Yeah. And you need the spontaneity. You can't program that in. I mean, things happen as a result of relationships, right? So over 3 days, you get to know someone, and maybe you have a lot of questions about who they are, and you start asking those questions, and all of a sudden, you've got a really good conversation going there, and it brings the guys together.
Yeah.
Even though our retreat was programmed, I don't know that you necessarily had any idea what any four of us were going to talk about.
No, I just knew we were doing a somebody theme, and somebody being Jesus, somebody being who you are because of Jesus, somebody being somebody on that retreat, and then somebody back home that you needed to pursue. So no, I didn't know. And I think it kind of, once people knew, I think the one guy went first. I think you were second. Is that right?
Yeah.
You just kind of could see where that was going, and it was easy to just say, everybody's going deep here. I mean, that's where we're going.
It allowed the Holy Spirit to just break out. Like we weren't putting anything in a box.
Amen. That is 100% true.
Which made it so powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's change of
Pace plus change of place equals change of perspective. Or, as we said coming out of Montana last year, we had Chris Hartenstein with us 2 weeks ago, it's finding a Montana pace in an Ohio place. So we kind of brought Montana into it a little bit, but
that's
either way.
good. I would add one thing,
Please.
and that would
Mark
be,
Batterson doesn't mind.
and I don't know if I have one word for it, but I would say change of associates. I mean, mixing in
Some of the
guys
people you
that
know
don't
and-
know
yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
I think that adds to the richness of it.
You both have alluded to that clearly, yeah. Well, and I think part of it is like I'll say him by name because I have great love for this guy, James Gray, who was on our retreat. He's 22 years old. We had 22 years old. I think the oldest guy was 64. 20 guys covering 42 years. And James and I just met 6 months ago. We've been to not an overnight, but a evening thing down in Miamisburg with a group of guys. I think we've only been together one-on-one once or twice. Well, we drove together down there, but it's not been a lot of time. But seeing him interact with like Steve Leap, and then seeing him share and listen to people, and then he did a video for our friend Chuck Hall, who has recovering from heart surgery right now. When I saw James in a number of contexts in a short period of time in those 4 days, when we do the last thing where we kind of take a ball and throw it around and encourage each other, to my knowledge, I've never had that happen where I started crying about someone that wasn't one of my kids because my boys have been there before, and I just lost it. I mean, I can feel it in my heart. Like I think if I remember correctly, Rob, I said to James, James, I love you. And I paused and I started saying something else, and I stopped again. I said, I love you. And it's maybe a fatherly thing, but I'm like, I learned so much from this guy at 22 years old. And I could have it every 2-week cup of coffee with him, or every 2-week lunch for a year, and I wouldn't get to see it the way I do there. It just so other thoughts on that change of pace plus change of place equals change of perspective? Because I think it's a powerful. It's a quote I live by and try to implement in my life often.
When I need to talk to God, most of the time I don't feel like I hear from God. If I'm being honest, like prayer is a struggle for me because it feels very one-sided most of the time. But I know when I do hear from God, it's almost always when I'm out hiking. There's just something about being in the woods where I see his creation and I feel like he's there, and it takes me a while. For me, just getting out of the city, and I live in Enid, it's not really a city, but
it's a village.
Gosh, man, and I think that it's different for everyone. Some people, like when you're riding a motorcycle, that's when God's talking to you, but wherever God talks to you, Jesus went away and prayed.
Yeah, he knew.
You got to find your place.
Yeah.
And for me, that's what going out in the woods is, and so the retreat's perfect for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your everyday life is loud. So the change of pace is important. It gets you away from whatever loud is in your life.
See, 2 questions with this. I want to hear from you. Like 2 questions to me. I think you always got to bring up on a regular, daily, even moment by moment basis. And I think retreats, camps, whatever you want to call them, trips, vacation, even is an appropriate word somewhat. I think 2 questions you always have to ask is what feeds your soul and what gives you life. And if we're not asking that regularly, I mean, it's not going to just happen. We have to go look for it. We have to grasp it. It's kind of the crown jewel that we're going to go grab hold of. So, Eli, it looked like you had maybe another thought about the change of pace perspective.
Oh, I was just going to add, I believe the statement is good the way it stands, but I think it's really important to be very strategic about reaching out to guys who perhaps never in their life have even thought about going on a retreat with other guys. It is not a priority, maybe even not even thought about at all. You don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who's never done it before has no idea of what an impact a retreat would have on them.
Sure.
So reaching out for those guys, far enough in advance, making it as easy as possible for them to make the commitment, and then to prioritize that and protect that so that they experience it one time.
Yeah.
If they experience it one time, I think they'll want it again.
Well, I think I told you, Eli, my wife was big on making sure I understood prior to these retreats that, she goes, Jeff, you kind of sometimes just think like everybody does this. She said plenty of men, as grown adult men, never go on retreats with other adult grown men. This is just something I'm about. I brought this in. When I left youth ministry, I said, I'm taking some of the things I loved about youth ministry and bringing it in. And when you got a background like I do in Young Life, you love what they do with camps. So I'm trying to bring that in. So this is clearly a livelihood thing for me. But I think, this is something, it'll change guys' lives. Rob?
When I shared what was going on in my life, several guys spoke up and said, I couldn't believe that you're going through all that, because they only ever see the public face. They only ever see what's good. I mean, that's what we like to put out on social media, is things that are good. So sometimes leaders and probably everyone, people who look like they have it all together oftentimes don't. We all have skeletons in our closet. So just because you think somebody doesn't need a retreat, they may be the ones that need it the most, because they are tired, they're exhausted of putting on a happy face when their life is kind of in shambles behind closed doors.
Yeah,
that was freeing for me to hear someone say, I had no idea that you're going through that. And kudos to you that despite all that, you're still able to show up to work and do positive things for the community.
I remember that guy saying that.
I went home and told my wife that, because I felt so proud that despite everything that we're going through privately, we're still together. Our marriage is still strong. We're still doing well in our careers. There's something to be said, and unless you get that stuff out in the open, you're never going to hear that.
Well, and that speaks to 2 things. One, I love the fact, I remember exactly that moment, and that guy who said it was really impressed with how there's nothing in your work life that shows that, but it wasn't like he was saying you're hiding anything. It's just, and then to see this vulnerable side too, those 2 things that seem, or maybe going the same direction, one challenging, one just like, hey, you're productive and getting things done, really added a breadth and depth to who you are. So to tie into this, another phrase I like, and the Lord's been giving me this the last couple of weeks, partly because I got a 16-year-old kid who will be getting his license maybe next week or sometime following, is speed kills. And we've been talking about, as a dad, when your kid starts getting there to get a car, or he's not getting a car. Let me be clear about that. Get his license. The Lord better show up if he's getting a car. I don't know about that, but
I think that was a prophecy.
yeah, maybe. Hey, let's see if somebody out there wants to reach out to me. But anyway, speed kills, and you have to think about when your kid gets their license. Wrecks happen all the time. Speed kills is a phrase the Lord's been reminding me of. Like, that is just true in our lives. What do you guys think about that? Speed kills. The need for slowing down in retreats. Does speed kill?
Oh, there's no question about it. You alluded, Rob, earlier to always depleting yourself. And along with that sometimes goes you're moving too fast, at too fast of a pace. I think, if God in the flesh, Jesus himself, needed to retreat, who are we? Who are we? Mm-hmm. And taking sabbaticals. I've never had a a real sabbatical. Right?
Urban Light Board, I'm getting one June 19th through August 23rd. Let's get Eli in the loop. Sabbatical.
SBDC board.
SBDC Board.
Yeah,
Thank you, Gathering Board.
I'm approaching 40 years in ministry, and I've never had a retreat. And,
So times
boo-hoo for me. I'm not saying it for that
So
reason.
divided by 6, you get 6 2/3 times however many weeks. Wow, you get about a year sabbatical.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, which a sabbatical should be a year, actually.
There you go.
Every 7 years, right? That's a dream that probably won't ever come true. But anyway, the point is that we go from week to week, day to day. We're in our grind. That's a real popular term these days. You gotta keep grinding. Okay, but sometimes you gotta stop.
Yeah, that term after a while wears me out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta stop. You've got to rest. You've got to recharge. You need recreation. I'm preaching as though I'm some kind of expert in it. I failed miserably in it, but these are things I've learned, over time. We need, just as human beings, we need to rest and recharge. So I'm pushing that harder than I ever have before. It was pushed to me, and it took me a long time to come to that realization. So we've got to slow our pace, and we've got to.
Seth's
get
laughing,
away
and I
from
know
the
why he's
speed.
laughing.
Seth's laughing? What-
He's laughing because I think Eric has a sign on his wall that says hustle and grind, and he's got definitions of it. Entrepreneurs can fall into that trap so easy. Like
No doubt.
we worship at the shrine of hustling. I started an event
And it's
called
a dangerous
Springfield
thing.
Hustles.
It's a dangerous
It is.
thing.
I've stopped answering the question, how are things going with busy?
Yeah.
Because
I hate
I've heard
that
you
answer.
say so many times, that's not a badge of honor, and you're right. For me, am I busy? Yes. I'm lucky if I get 5 or 6 hours of sleep. It seems like I am too busy. And how it affects me, it affects my mental health. I'm stressed most of the time. But even more than that, I think it affects my physical health. I'm just so busy that I can't even think about eating healthy or going to the gym. And so like rest, physically rest is super important. But also having margin in your life to be able to go to the gym, to be able to cook a nice meal, that's important. And you can't do that if you're just over scheduled.
Sure.
And we have a big problem with that in this country.
Amen.
Look, at the creator of the universe rested on the seventh day.
Yeah.
Who are we to think that we can just go and go and go and never stop?
Yeah.
And Sunday, for most of us, doesn't
Not what
count.
it is. It's
Because
catch-up day.
If you're a church person, you're going to be in church. It used to be all day for me.
Sure.
So that's not really a quality time of rest. We still need that Sabbath, even though we may have a Sunday church
I love
day.
the 3 words you kept using there. Who are we? Who are we? Who are we? It's interesting. So one of the guys on our retreat, Rob, Jeremy Hudson, his daughter did our Brood Awakenings devotional today. Mackenzie Hudson, go Mackenzie. And what was her topic about? She talked for 2.5 minutes. It was about rest. It was about slowing down. It was Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I'm God. And it was Matthew 11:28 about handing over our load because the Lord's yoke is light and he wants to take it. I thought, how ironic that we're hearing this from a teenage girl who just got her permit. I think it was her permit, but I'm like, wow, she's teaching us. I sent that out to guys. It's precious. I'm like, I hope we're learning here. Do we need a teenage girl to teach us about this? I mean, go Mackenzie, but I'm like, if she sees it, we need to see it. So what do you think next? I mean, both of you obviously have developed this passion, love, whether it's recent or over a longer period of time through retreats. What's next when you think about retreats? Obviously, you probably want to consume more than you want to produce, but what do you see for yourself next as far as a retreat goes?
I want more people to experience it. I think I'm in a unique position where I'm around a lot of people who have that hustle mentality, who worship at the shrine of grinding. And I have a unique opportunity to influence them to slow down because that has lasting implications. It's going to affect everyone who comes after you in your family tree. It's obviously going to help you. And really, that's going to make you a better business owner who's going to be more successful, creates more jobs, and does more for Springfield. So I just want to share something good I discovered. And I obviously, I want to keep going on more retreats. I can't wait to go to Montana.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
As a man and as a father-son deal, I can see that for you both. Eli, what about you? What's next for you on the retreat radar?
Well, I don't have anything scheduled. My wife and I are going away for 7 days, but I would like to see a group of guys from different parts of the community. come together and go away and spend some quality time together, a retreat, no pressure, just a combination of some structured time and some unstructured time to get to know each other, keeping it spiritual, and to see what comes out of it.
Yeah. We got a glimpse of that on both retreats. Definitely that one. There was no real big list of here's how we're trying to get there. I mean, on that trip, it was interesting. The guys that went, we were, much closer in age because I'm 51, you're 52, I think, something like that.
Thank you. You're so kind.
I'm doing good today. And here's the guys. We asked the short list of guys, no rhyme or reason, put it together. That's who went. Ours, I said earlier today, we had 20 guys. I can't imagine who we'd sacrifice there to put someone else in. It was just God putting the right people, right time, right place. It was rich that way. So what if you could say something to people listening? I mean, this is a conversation people get to peek in on. What would you want to see people take from this conversation and apply to their lives?
So the gathering is one of their big things is find a 2 a.m. friend. And I love the thought of that, but I never felt like I was getting that close to it from showing up to lunch events or even locker rooms. I think that walking away from that retreat, almost everyone there probably gained a 2 a.m. friend. So if that sounds appealing to you, and I can't imagine it doesn't, go on a retreat. You're probably going to find a 2 a.m. friend there.
And the reality is you don't need the gathering to do it. I mean, there's all kinds. We got a group of guys we talked to last year. We had to kind of shut it down because of COVID and timing and whatever, but who were looking to start just a camping type of, you were one of them, retreat, get out, hike kind of thing. These things are for the taking for anybody.
Yeah.
So Eli, what about you? What would you hope someone would take and try to apply that to their lives from our conversation here?
A commitment to retreating, resting,
Whatever that looks like.
whatever it looks like for you. Just be intentional, do it, and if you can, make a new friend, someone who's not like you. Build on that relationship and see where God takes it.
I like how we prioritize in these, and we're experiencing it to the nth degree. It's definitely about us and the Lord, and it's definitely about us and other guys. So, well, Eli Robb, this has been great. I could go for a lot longer, but we probably need to sign off. And we will be back gathering the Miami Valley Friends in 2 weeks with our next podcast. Have a great day.